Hi, I'm Kelly,
And I am Paul,
and this is
the fungus among us, a Last of Us podcast.
welcome back, everybody. I'm just laughing at your facial expressions.
Really? I was laughing at your speaking of funny facial expressions, did you see Dina's facial expression when Tommy threatened to put her on rendering duty?
Um, I don't recall it exactly because I feel like she made so many faces. She's very expressive as an actor, and just with her face. So she says a lot without even saying anything at times.
She does. And also, that expression in particular I really appreciated because it was so silly. That to me is like a fearless actor who's not afraid to make any kind of facial expression, even a silly one in a serious show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, she makes a lot of bold choices, as Dina that I really love, and just not even as Dina, but as an actor.
Yeah.
So, certainly I enjoyed Dina's performance. I'm gonna have to check out what look like what are you taking away from it?
Check out just it was just like rendering is gross. Like it was just like, oh, I don't want to do that. Kind of like,
Oh, yeah, okay. Now I do remember
Yeah.
that look.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how expressive she is.
Yeah.
That's so funny to me. Yeah. Mhm.
It's good
Just
stuff. Yeah.
when I had to think about it, when Ellie and Dina are in the tent and, um, Dina responds to Ellie's rating, like, the kiss was a 6. Just her face alone was yeah, she's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. She might be stealing this show. This might be turning into the Dina show.
It has felt that way a little bit. I don't know, we'll have to go back because alright, everybody, when I contacted Paul, again, now we're kinda doing this thing where we're not really responding to each other and how we think the show went after it airs. Like, we wait. Paul doesn't really know how I feel about it. I don't really know what he thinks, how he processed it all.
Yeah. And it
Um
makes the podcast so much more lively because I'm finding out your thoughts in real time as the listener listens.
which, it's fun. However, this time and everyone give me a moment to explain myself. I messaged Paul, that I was underwhelmed. And I think that even threw Paul off a little bit, maybe because I clearly the episode is great. I went back and watched it in a different headspace. I mean, so everyone knows in this audience, I lost my father almost a year ago, and I, that day in particular that it aired, I was dealing with grief so profoundly that I was just so detached from everything that I was participating in. And when this show hits a moment of Ellie grieving, I couldn't allow myself to feel it because I
Mhm.
was so worried about where my mind and my body where that was gonna go. So I kind of tuned out this the first go around, but I went back, I watched it, I love it. I think Bella Ramsey did such a phenomenal job in portraying grief. I'm rambling on, but the point is, it was so hard to watch. I think Bella portrays grief in such a uh, open and honest way that it made it more painful to watch.
Wow, that makes total sense. Yeah, when you texted me that, you were like, yeah, I'm kind of underwhelmed. I think maybe we could just do like a short little thing for this episode or whatever. I was like, what? There's a lot to talk about here. And I was like, she must have had something else on her mind when she was watching it. But I didn't really say anything. I was like, I think we
You
got a
didn't.
full episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
But of
Yeah,
course,
you're
I should have. I mean, yeah, I should have figured. Obviously, we're watching Ellie mourn her father figure, and that's obviously going to hit really close to home for you.
oh my god, it really did. And I think also because again, I can't put it in quite into the words I would like, but they did such a heartbreaking performance of grief. I mean, when the show opens up with the carnage of the infected burning, and then those in the town that were lost, and then Joel and Tommy sitting together, like you're just really surrounded by this darkness. Yet somehow it was when we go to Ellie and she awakes in the hospital. I was goosebumps. I had goosebumps the second time watching, and maybe the first, but I was disassociating. Goosebumps because her scream and her fear, Ellie's fear, she was just so in the moment of that loss and that horrific thing that happened, losing Joel, that wow, I thought, what a powerful start.
Heavy shit. Also, rewinding a little bit, because the very first scene, right, is Joel being washed, and then Tommy takes over and like takes the watch. And remember,
Mhm.
Tommy says, "Tell Sarah I said I."
Yep, I cried. Yep. I know you're crying. Stop.
That's a very
You're
emotional show. I
crying.
know.
See, I know. It's just
Th-
like it's so
This is
strange. The audience doesn't know, but we were like laughing and joking around.
no,
So
but
to go
that's why
from
you
like
got to watch
yeah.
the video on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. That way you can see the tears glistening in our eyes as we
I
talk about
mean,
this.
I it I just I laugh a lot. So I have to say, like, I was that to me was almost everyone talks about when, she lost Joel in Bella's performance, um, that's when they are gonna be nominated for an Emmy for that performance. I'm like, "I don't know, man." It was that opening scene where she was screaming in shock. That was so crazy. I don't know, all of it is just so hard to watch, and so I love this show so much more than, I thought I would, because now you really get to be with all of these characters in a way that you don't, because The Last of Us, at the end of the day, it's also an action game with a brilliant, beautiful story. So certainly enjoying all the characters.
Yeah. On the topic of Bella's Emmy nomination, I predict that it will be for a performance that we're going to see in the final episode of the season. This is my prediction. I'm thinking of a specific
Ooh.
moment from the game that I don't want to say because it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I predict it's going to happen in the last episode of the season, and I predict that that's going to be the Emmy nom.
But I agree with you. Just tell me that. What do you think? I don't know.
Would you agree with me? Maybe. I'll give
It's
you a hint. It's
yeah.
kind of the same moment as Tom Hanks at the end of Captain Phillips. I okay, I don't know.
I haven't
Alright,
seen
that's a
it.
really it's a very obtuse hint, but,
Very
anyway, we'll
much
see, we'll
so.
see. I don't know. Well, I mean, I could just tell you, and if you don't wanna put it in the podcast, you could cut it out.
Okay. Well, for those tuning in, I think they know there's a lot of spoilers we talk about in this show. But okay, go ahead and
Okay,
tell
yeah,
me, and
so
I'll
basically
take it out maybe.
right, if you wanna stay spoiler free, hit the fast forward 15-second button on your podcast app in
Okay, they get
3, 2, 1. The part where she gets back to the theater and she's covered in blood and traumatized and shaking, and Dina's washing the blood off her.
it. Ooh,
That scene. That's gonna be the Emmy nom. That's what I think.
that's a brilliant scene. This is this is a new person that we're meeting. Like Ellie has grown into this person that I was expecting a lot earlier in the story, but she's different now. You
Mm.
can just tell.
Yeah. And, speaking of which, while we're at the beginning of the episode talking about the changes to Ellie, did you notice the change to the opening credits?
Don't break my heart.
Can you
I
guess?
didn't. I didn't. And Pedro was not on it.
Well, not only that, but you know how at the end of the opening credits, the fungus forms like the two silhouettes of Joel and Ellie?
Oh
The
no,
Joel,
stop.
the Joel silhouette's gone now. Yeah, it's just Ellie.
Oh goodness. And
I know.
I always watch the opening credits. She's changed now, and that is a part of grief, that immediate shock, I think. And again, it's not a linear path for everyone, but that immediate shock of that day, that moment when they're gone, you're just immediately a changed person. Um how you respond to it is a different journey for everyone, and certainly following Ellie's is going to be remarkable. I loved the scene at the town hall. There's so many moments that you could just pick apart, but you cut to 3 weeks later, and she's with in the hospital. And I really wanted to bring this up because you know me so well as a friend all these years, over a decade, because she was so good at outsmarting, like talking to adults. Not even just outsmarting, she knew what to do and how to do it and was very sassy about it to get the result that was needed. And I'm like, that's a quality that I had kind of growing up. And that's a quality that I had when I was really struggling, in my 20s, or at USC. And I just like I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, this is this is the type of language that someone who is young yet really just so matured in their agony or grief or just life experiences knows how to talk to adults to get what they want.
Yeah. Although I don't know. I mean, in my experience though, you're much better at selling it. Like I think that in this
Yeah.
episode, Ellie wasn't she wasn't fooling anyone, and she wasn't even really trying to. There
Right.
was just kind of this understanding, like, look, I'm going to say all this stuff, so you're going to hit a dead end, and this conversation will be over. And she was kind of like gloating about it
Yeah.
subtextually. Uh, you were pretty. You're, I think, a little trickier when you would do that kind of stuff. Like you would really,
Trickier, but,
well,
like,
you
I
was
was very I used a
very
lot of
convincing.
sense of humor. A lot of sense of humor, though, as well.
Yeah, true, true.
Gosh, remember, like, our professor would say, like, I had quite a sense of humor, like, clearly, to be able to go through the things I was going through.
Oh yeah, totally. No,
So
you're pretty much always funny, um, even in like really dark times.
it's what can I say? It's a gift
It's a gift.
that I
Yeah,
like to give my audience.
yeah.
It's given me so many friends. It's it's glued the foundation of so many relationships.
Yeah, well, laughter is
Oh
so
my god.
important.
It
Yeah.
really is. But I really love Catherine O'Hara. I just continue to think what an interesting choice to have a therapist in this post-apocalyptic world. So Gail knows too. I should give credit to the profession and just being an adult. Like she knows that, Ellie is just fucking with her, but at the same time knew what to do and what to say to get out of that situation so that that she could leave the hospital. What I am just continuing to just discover is my love for Jackson, Wyoming in this world, and I don't wanna leave it, and I realized when finishing the show for the episode, like, "Oh, they don't come back, at least in the
Well,
game." Like,
yeah,
not
but
really, not
no,
to
but I think that in the show we're gonna probably be cutting back to those characters just because that. Right.
yeah.
I mean, we know that there's Eugene has been cast, and at some point we're gonna see Eugene alive in flashbacks, right? Because why else would they
Yeah.
cast Joe? And the Tommy and Maria are getting narrative focus. I feel like
Mhm,
there's probably going to be parallel threads going
mhm.
that take
I'm
us back to
sure
Jackson.
I'm sure that they're, again, but we had a big deviation, so it's fair for me to, assume
Yeah,
properly here that maybe we don't go back to Jackson because,
maybe we don't.
the whole journey to get out, I say Delhi now, that's the little cute name for them.
Yeah,
Ellie and Dina, it's totally different in how they, leave Jackson to pursue finding Abby and her crew in Seattle.
it
Very,
is.
very different,
Yeah,
and I really enjoyed the deviation, so I don't
me too.
know.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think that it was interesting to put in the time jump, right? Because in the game there is not one at this point in the story because the attack on Jackson never happened. So you
Right.
kind of feel like Ellie's hitting the road like the next day or something in the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting to see the town hall and to see
Mhm.
sort of a scene where characters are expressing views on the
Right.
sort of on vengeance versus justice, whether it's worth it and stuff, and sort of having that conversation become text instead of subtext before they leave.
Yeah.
Um,
Even a bigot sandwich Seth stood up.
right.
I don't
Which,
know if we talked about it last episode, but in the game, Ellie says, "Thanks for the bigot sandwich," after he,
yeah,
makes a big pr fuss at the dance of Dina and Ellie kissing, and anyway,
yeah,
this version of Seth expressing himself was totally not expected and really fun to watch,
it
so
was. And that actor is awesome. Because
yes.
after the first episode, we were both like hesitantly admitting that we like Seth, and I think that watching him again, I'm like, I like that actor. Like that
Yeah,
guy.
I like that actor, yeah.
That guy is really bringing out this character. And I thought it was super, super interesting to have Seth be the guy, to take that character who's been established in the story only as a bigot who may or may not be genuinely apologetic, and then to now have him be finding common cause with Ellie, advocating
Mhm.
for vengeance, using sort of right-wing coded language, right? He's calling
Mm,
everyone victims if they don't do it,
mhm.
right?
Right.
And then he's giving Ellie his gun and he's like an ally. And so I'm wondering, like, how are we supposed to take that? Are we supposed to be like, oh, Seth was a good guy all along? Or are we supposed to think, well, look who this vengeance quest is already putting Ellie in an alliance with an asshole, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I wanna lean on the side of, like, people being good, but this is just not that world in the
Right.
make believe or the real one. I don't know. I would try to think maybe Seth, uh, had genuine care for the community. At the same time, yeah, it's a very right-wing coded language, which just, anyway, getting around all that, I still thought it was a brilliant, scene to have, and it wasn't, just him, but all the other people that spoke up. It really gave you a sense of the town, who these people are, that there is this sense of civility,
Yeah.
to the town and each other. That was really nice to see and experience in the show, and you don't get that in the game. And in the
Yeah.
game, I really tried to explore the town as much as possible. So I'm so glad they have a lot more of the town.
Yeah, it's nice. I would, you know, what would have been nice too is to see the part where Ellie and Dina have the snowball fight with the kids.
I
That's
know, I was thinking about that too.
yeah.
I have a lot of curiosity about Dina. This I
Mhm.
think she's the right person for this role. She's doing an amazing job. I'm talking about, like, how they want this version of Dina to be. It doesn't seem like she, you know, is as much in the game. In the game, she I feels more confident, I think, or at least more aware of her sexuality. And in this story, she was saying she's not gay. Um, so I found
Yeah.
that, there was a time so I was like, Dina, stop. Sorry, almost broke some. I was that passionate. Like, Dina, stop playing with her. Stop, stringing her along with,
Yeah.
like, how was my kiss, And then you know me, I'm already bummed out that they didn't have that scene of Dina and Ellie getting
I,
together.
well, and that line about the kiss kicked off that scene in the game. The
I
scene
know.
where they're, but you know, I think that's coming. I mean,
I'm
I
sure
think
it
that
is.
I think that they had to reset Dina a little bit because there was the time jump. So
Yeah.
now that kiss at the dance was something that happened a couple months ago that they'll have to unpack when they're on the road together, right? And
Yeah.
I think that this way the love story can be played as a little bit more of a slow burn, probably, and they can
Mhm.
explore it as they go.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well,
you
it's
know,
complicated with her, I don't want to say situation. I'm just like, again, there are going to be spoilers here, so
mhm.
you have
And
been
well, and
warned.
also, you know, the one that you're thinking of was definitely hinted at in this episode.
Yeah, but I asked my partner Umaru what he thought. He, I don't know. He just was like, I don't know. Like, he seemed to have no clue.
Well, there's
Because it
yeah, I
also could be very real that she felt sick from seeing one of those that like those scars. We gotta talk
yeah.
about the scars, but one of them being children, coming across where people had been, slaughtered coulda made her sick.
Yeah,
That's
seeing a bunch of
believable.
dead bodies is more than enough to make me believe that a character would hurl.
Yeah, so I suspect that there were, other than the rumors going out there in the media, I suspect that people know she's pregnant.
Yeah, there it is. That's the spoiler. Well, yeah, and so that because that's the other thing. Like that's why
Mhm.
she had to get back together with Jesse because
Yeah, they
otherwise
had to
she would
write
be
that in there.
showing by now if they had conceived before the dance.
Yeah, well, some women at, 3 months don't show, so
Yeah,
or even
yeah,
less, she 3 months had passed, and then when the here we are calculating the time Dina and Jesse hook up. What
yeah.
weirdos.
We should. Yeah, we also should probably try to figure out Dina's fertility calendar.
Yeah, Jesus, Long
Yeah.
story short, it was interesting how it all is very different when you find out how you find out. I mean, again, you don't know exactly yet, but, um just her being sick right now rather than later on, and them writing it in the show that she hooked up with Jesse, basically not that long ago.
Hmm.
So, she probably was coping,
Yeah.
because
So
clearly, yeah, there's a disconnect in that relationship as well, Dina and Jesse.
yeah.
So,
If you don't mind, I'd like to jump back for a minute to the town
yeah.
meeting because I have a question.
Yeah.
So why is that one guy advocating that they switch from chickens to turkey?
I mean, I don't know, but I loved it. It's just
Yeah,
so random.
I want to know. Like, did turkeys
It's
eat less? Is it like just more meat on the bird? Like, why does he want to switch to turkeys? And why is it an either or? Can't they just? I mean, they have plenty of room. Can't they have
Yeah,
both?
he's talking about how complicated it is or how long it takes to grow corn, and it is kinda like, "What is going on here?" But yeah, those are great questions that we need the answers to.
Right. And why doesn't this guy have an opinion on the Seattle thing? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
he's
what
so
they're
fixated on food,
it was
but like,
his
which is important.
he's probably, in charge of the agriculture there or something, I don't know,
Yeah.
he was like, "This is my chance to talk about turkeys over." It's
I
like,
dude, I bet th
I love this town.
I bet that's I bet that every time that they see that guy coming, they all kind of like sigh. You know, I bet they all look at each other and go like, "Oh god, this guy's going to want to talk about the fucking corn again."
I know people like that in my building. I avoid them at all costs.
Right.
But they're important to the building, so I don't know.
Yeah, you gotta have those guys. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, well, look, what he wants to talk about, I think, probably technically is a little bit more important than the execution mission for the
I
survival
don't
of
know.
humanity.
Yeah, I don't know. Agree to disagree, as,
Yeah,
Gail would say.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and a very different introduction to the scars to have them sort of marching through and establishing clearly that they're a group that is an outcast. Uh, it felt to me a more like gentle introduction. I can't remember the game exactly, but I remember those whistles,
Mm,
and ooh, I made me want to duck like in the game. I loved it. It was
yeah.
eerie, creepy. They did it so well.
So
But I was like empathetic to whatever they were going through. I
yeah,
couldn't.
well, yeah. I mean, when you introduce them as families that are trying to protect children, and yeah, it's a huge difference. And I think that in the game during that same section, Ellie and Dina do come across some bodies, but of course, you don't actually see them. And the first time you experience the scars as a player, I think, is when they show up out of nowhere and just start attacking Ellie. Much more
Yeah,
sympathetic introduction here.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it was very interesting to see them early and to sort of, also to get a little bit of a sense. They start talking about the prophet and the philosophy that underlies them,
Mhm,
which was very interesting. And in the game, because they're introduced as attackers, you just feel like they're religious zealot psychos, which in some ways they are. But
mhm,
here you do
mhm, mhm.
definitely get a little bit more of their perspective. So it was a pretty big shift.
Yeah.
We were talking about the depiction of grief, and this show carried
Mhm,
over a moment from the game that I felt so powerful because of its intimacy, which is the moment where Ellie walks through Joel's house and goes through his stuff, and then goes over and smells his jacket and cries. Um,
yeah.
that is to me, I mean, I think that some version of that moment is part of grieving anyone that you lose, if it can be. If you have stuff to go through and stuff to smell, you're going to want to have that moment, and it's a painful moment. It's like a weirdly beautiful moment. It's kind of cathartic. You really feel the person's presence and their absence so strongly at the same time. So I was just really glad to see that carried over into the show and to be recreated so faithfully.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that we're talking about it. I remember the opening shot of Ellie standing in front of the house, and I was brought back to the game, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, we're about to walk through, their home, Joel's home."
Hmm.
And, yeah, when she smelled the jacket, I too sobbed because I have, my dad's jacket that I'll go to and smell sometimes. So, there's the how scent can just really bring you back to a moment
Mm,
of place and time is so bizarre.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like being on something. I don't know.
I had the same question in the show that I had in the game too, which is, the people of Jackson have laid flowers outside Joel's house.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, where'd they get those flowers in the wintertime in Wyoming? I guess they have hothouses where they're growing flowers.
Well,
It's the only explanation.
clearly though, 3 months had passed from that winter, so spring is here. So
Oh, it makes
I,
more
I
sense. Yeah,
didn't
the
I didn't
show.
really see snow.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, no,
I
the show answered that little question.
yeah,
That's a really good point.
you must have been suffering this whole time wondering
Yeah, it was. No, that one
of
really. It
all
was
the
so. it was snap me out of it. It's so unimmersive, you
All
know?
the things you were hoping for.
Yeah, I never would have guessed
Um,
they would explain that, but no, you're right, that's great, I'm glad they did that. But yeah, it was
Me
funny,
too.
I was
Mhm.
talking to Annalise on Sunday before, because we were, gonna part ways and go do our thing, and she's like, "Well, maybe I'll text you after Last of Us if it's really intense," and I was like, "Oh, this one probably won't be that intense, it's just gonna be Ellie going through Joel's stuff."
But that's so intense.
It is intense, that was kinda my
Yeah.
little joke with myself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It'll pass for some. I don't know. You know, I think it's so interesting, in the game it's very different when Dina calls for Ellie in the house. After we're with Ellie grieving. God, it felt so impactful. But Dina is by herself and in the game Maria is with her. What's so cool about Dina in this version of Dina is I feel in a lot of ways she is was always maybe the more logical one. But I don't know. I feel like at the same time she's very intelligent and knows how to prepare for, you know, this rugged terrain they're about to go through. But she's an emotionally like charged person as well. So in so many ways, like in that way, Ellie and Dina complement each other, but they're also very different. Ellie completely like almost surrenders to her emotions and how she communicates, where Dina has a strategy in mind. So I think it's great how they introduce it in this show where Dina is smart enough to wait and tell Ellie so that she knows where Abby is. That she had been lying to her for 3 months. That's tough for Ellie to probably process. But I loved the scene with the cookies and they came to a plan. And so I'm like, this version of Dina is, I think, in some ways a lot more intelligent rather than just like kind of in love with Ellie. The way I felt like Dina was in love with Ellie in the game.
Mhm.
Um, Not yet quite feeling that emotion between them, and that's fine. She clearly has a love for Ellie. In a way, she loved Joel, and that's a lot more evident to me in this show than in the game. So that's
Yeah.
cool.
And another thing that I really appreciated about that whole moment is that there has been times where the show has chosen to change details of the game for the sake of telling the story on TV, and then kind of twisted itself into pretzels to explain the change.
Hmm.
The one example being something I've brought up before, which is when Ellie gets a bite on top of a bite because Joel needs to be double convinced that she's immune in season
Hmm.
one for some reason.
Yeah.
But here, I totally bought it. They'd made this
Hmm.
change, they pushed the timeline back. It did create a few wrinkles with where the story needed to go, specifically with Ellie and Dina's relationship. And then they weaved their way through those wrinkles and explained them in a way that felt really organic and led to
Yeah.
cool character reveals and cool scenes and explained the flowers and just everything just
Yeah.
really clicked. So it was
Yeah.
just very artfully done, I thought.
I think so too. It's really hard to talk about any sort of like, I really wish they had done something else in this episode. Because another moment that is very noteworthy, even just for its cinematography, how it looks. And it wasn't even just the jacket when Ellie smells Joel's jacket, which hit for me. It was, and I could cry when Dina and Ellie, make their way out. So we established, Seth help Dina and Ellie with their cause. Uh, Again, I love how Gail sees it. That for Ellie, this isn't about justice. It's also clearly about revenge. She could see that she was, you know, full of it. But I also believed Ellie that she'd, show up for a cause if somebody lost their family. She, in a way, she cares. So,
Yeah. Well, she also
it,
really wants to kill people, I think, in the
yeah, no,
show,
she's got
which
she's fucked up. She has a lot of problems. Um, where I'm going with this, they leave. Dina and Ellie are at Joel's grave, and I think it was also in that moment, not just like the horror in the beginning where she's screaming, Not just in the beginning where she's screaming, but where, she's got the coffee beans for Joel and, gives them to him at the grave. I can't tell you, like, how I, would how devastated that was for me, and, you could just see it in, the actor's face. They were really portraying grief so well that, like, her dad was there but wasn't there. Like, you could see, Bella's eyes sort of, like, going through memories of them together,
Mm,
and that was, for me, so, it was just such a great scene because it just really I said I'm gonna cry. It really, it shows you sort of what grief is too in some ways. It's not always just like screaming and you're in a moment of like complete rage about it or despair about it. It's also where you're just so still with it and yet it's still killing you.
mm, yeah,
It's just those coffee beans though. It was like a joke between them. So, it made me wish I had something like that for my dad, a place to go to. Um, but I have his ashes, some of them. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That was also nice because I the show has barely touched on Joel's coffee obsession,
I know,
if
and
if
I
at
have
all. I mean, it definitely hasn't this season, I don't think, and I maybe like once the first season. It's something that gets
it
brought up a
was,
couple
yeah.
times in the game. So that was just like a very elegant thing. I mean, and you don't need it set up. You just get it, even if you didn't know. You're like, oh, I guess yeah, because he must have liked coffee, and yeah, coffee would be hard to get in the apocalypse.
Oh god,
But
I wouldn't survive.
it was a beautiful moment
Very much.
emotionally in its depiction of grief, and also, god damn, the cinematography in
Oh,
that
I
scene is
know.
almost too beautiful. That sunrise and the silhouettes and the magic, the morning magic hour. Oh my god, my eyeballs almost fell out of
I
my head and rolled
I
across the
know.
table.
It wasn't even just Bella and even Dina too, like, being still in that moment grieving, but in that space where it's, like, polar opposite to what you're feeling, where life is so beautiful. I
Mm,
was just like, "Wow, this show has just gone to every level to make it somehow more meaningful each and every, I don't know, moment and
yeah.
interaction to me." I think but just what a great scene.
Mm.
So that was you don't really get that in the game.
No, that
That
well, I
sort
mean,
of
yeah,
send off.
right, right. You don't. Possibly deliberately, but there's definitely not. I don't think you get to visit Joel's grave in the game. I don't know if
No.
there is
Oh
one.
wait, she
Do you?
it's you right before. See, this is it made me forget about it. I right before in the game, right before she goes into the house, or no, wait. There is a moment. No, she is at some sort of small town grave. It's very different setting. I think that's
Mm,
why the cinematography is so beautiful in the show. I
yeah.
forgot about this scene where Ellie visits Joel's grave, and that's where you walk up by yourself and you meet Dina. And then you are yeah.
Yeah, right, right. Because in the game, of course,
So
only one person died. In the show, like a pretty good chunk of the town got wiped out.
yeah.
Yeah,
So that's crazy that way. I forgot. I was like, oh, I don't remember visiting Joel's grave in the game, but we do.
yeah.
We do.
We do. It's just not as beautiful.
um, so either way, to have that kind of time with it, though, I feel was so important to the show. Um, I don't even feel like you have to know two people together to understand one person's grief of losing them. But yeah, certainly jam packed with a lot of emotionally charged moments. Um, Navigating those were very tough. And I think that's interesting that I had to watch it a second time. So,
Yeah, yeah, I did too. Yeah.
but
Great stuff. Yeah. And that really fun final moment made me feel like I didn't know what was going to happen. Where, early in the episode, they're like, it's probably just a couple
I know.
WLF guys. I'm sure we can handle it. And then it just shows you this whole freaking military parade of WLF fascists marching through Seattle as the final
Yeah.
image. That was fun.
It really gave me a sense of worry for Dina and Ellie, like, they just have no idea what they're getting into,
I
you
know, and
know?
it's so funny
So
because in broad strokes, I know everything that's gonna happen to them, but I still did have that moment of being like, "Oh, no, there's a bunch of those guys."
I know, right? That's what I love about this season is, like, I just feel so much more in the world
Yeah, me too. Me
every
too.
step of it.
And super fun also, speaking of being in the world, to start getting some early looks at Seattle, because that it's a really
Mhm.
beautiful location, like because Seattle's so overgrown because the Pacific Northwest is so wet, so there's like green on
Yeah.
everything and moss and it just really much more beautiful than anything we saw on the East Coast in the first game in terms of nature
Mhm.
reclaiming fallen cities and things like that. So it's fun to start to see that look get translated into the
Oh,
show.
yeah. Absolutely. I I am very curious of what I sort of knew what to expect in this episode after losing Joel, but right now I don't know what to expect. We could be going back to Abby. We could be going to the scars. We could be going to Tommy. Like we could be going to a flashback. We could go in so many different directions right now, which almost makes it more, again, more exciting. So,
No, that's true. Yeah, because I think that with the first three episodes, everything that has happened was just sort of like a confirmation that, like, yeah, this show is kicking off the story the same way the game did, more or less, right? But
mhm.
now it's true. It's opened up. Like, we know what the next major beat for Ellie is, but that doesn't tell us anything about what's going to happen in the next episode. We might not even see Ellie in the next episode.
Yeah, you know, I'm very curious because Tommy was at least aware that Dina and Ellie were on this journey because he got a head start. He had already left. So there's maybe a chance too that we don't even know if Tommy went ahead and started planning his
Hmm.
way there. That's still a
Good point.
possibility. You
Yeah.
know, he seemed very encouraging and supportive of the plan. Maybe, I don't know, or he could have been a no. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um Wait, did they tell you who? Cuz or do they do it in
No, they
order?
no, they did it. They
Is
did
it
a
in an
blind ballot. Yeah, they
was
just all. So here's a question for you, Kelster. If you were on the
mm.
Jackson City Council, how would you have voted?
You know what I think is a similarly but somehow more in-depth question
Hmm.
is how do I think Maria voted?
Oh, she voted no for sure.
I read she voted yes.
No, I think she voted no.
I
Wait,
read she
what do you
voted
mean you read
yes.
that? Did you read the minutes of the Jackson City Council
No,
meeting?
I followed up. There was like a snippet thing on um like a making of The Last of Us where she said, "Oh, she says yes. She supports what Ellie is saying."
This is what the actor said,
Yeah.
Regina.
I'm
Wow.
pretty sure that's what and so I was more curious, like, as Maria, what do you think? 'Cause but you thought no, and I
Maybe I'm just prejudiced by what she voted. I mean, because in the game she was so against it. Although she
yeah,
did kind of like she kind of helped them out, but only because she knew that there was no stopping it.
right, yeah, so I think they, in their own way, had her vote yes, and
Hmm.
I could kinda tell watching it again that she would support it. Like, she was matching Ellie's energy on
Hmm.
this concept of like justice. I feel like that's because,
Interesting.
she was a prosecutor in her former life. And
Good
I
point.
feel like she is someone that likes to listen to the law. And in this world, executing them is justice. She sees it as justice, where Ellie sees it as revenge.
Yeah, so Ellie swayed her with her with her oration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
you could sort of see that like nod I felt or some sort of confirmation from Maria where yeah,
Yeah.
she was
One
convinced.
other thought, that the dude Carlisle that stood up and argued against it, I thought he made a pretty weak case,
It was a
because
weak case.
we were
Like
talking
we're
about
just supposed to forgive. I'm like,
yeah.
nah, man.
Yeah, I'm like,
Okay.
you could make. I mean, I'd be much more compelled by a pragmatic argument, like, look, we can't really afford what the lady
But
said. I
yeah,
don't
with the
know.
woman.
She made a lot of sense. I like that dude Carlisle. I'm like, dude, just sit down.
Yeah, I'd rather like go back to listening to the guy talking about turkeys and corn.
Right? Totally. No, totally. I still want to know
I want to know.
what are the benefits of turkeys over chickens. I'll look into that, and if I find anything, I'll bring it up on next week's episode
Yes,
of
please do.
The Fungus Among Us.
I think there is a chance Tommy had left. So, or in this version of the story, he's against it.
Yeah,
It's interesting to
it
to
is.
see these family dynamics come out in the show. So,
Dude,
yeah.
what if in this version it's Maria that goes?
I just don't see it. She
Yeah,
would not leave Jackson.
probably
She
not.
knows Jackson's a mess without her.
Yeah, it's true. They need her. Yeah, who'd let the dogs out when the bad guys came calling if she wasn't there?
Maria.
That's right. They need her.
I think she knows her obligation to the town more so and can also support Ellie's, or at least what she thinks is Ellie's version of justice.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and I also don't see her leaving her son.
Oh, that's right.
But then
They have a young
why
child.
would Tommy leave it? Like, I think
That's a
it's
good
a more
point.
convincing case in this show where Tommy wouldn't go,
Mhm.
because now in the show, he has a child where he did not in the game. So
Mm.
there's maybe a scenario where Tommy voted no,
Mhm.
or he doesn't go. So how will that
Mhm.
play out later on in the theater scene in the game when they all sort of collide? Will be interesting.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, like I kind of like the pace of the season so far. Before I was worried that they were like rushing it, and now I feel like even though we're kind of quickly moving through the motions of the beginning, it's crazy to me that Seattle is in the story just 3 days of life after they've been through so much. Seattle, just the game, is 3 days.
Yeah.
That's it took me like a whole summer to get through it.
Yeah. A lot happens in those 3 days.
It felt like 3 months, it
Yeah.
was crazy. I really wanna just give props to, like, the show doing such a great job at navigating these different characters and how they're experiencing grief so far. Um, it's wild to me because I never really thought something could be as good as the game. And in so many ways, I'm liking it differently. Of course, playing something is different than watching it, but in terms of like the story and the characters, I didn't imagine I could love it more. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought that the first season ultimately I never thought it got out of the shadow of the game, and
Mhm.
I think the second season so far kind of has.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think that's
become its own
exactly.
thing, and it's become equally interesting in some different ways.
Mhm.
And yeah, they're killing it this season, I think.
I'm looking forward to next week's show. And thank you so much, you guys, for coming back. This has been really fun.
That's right. I am Paul,
I'm still Kelly.
and this has been The
The
Fungus,
fungus among us.
a Last of Us podcast.